Okay, so I want you to just close your eyes for a second and imagine the word jinn.
Mm.
Like, what image immediately pops into your head right now? Be honest.
I mean, if we're going by the standard cultural default, I'm guessing it's a very specific shade of blue.
Exactly. It's the blue guy, it's the lamp, it's
Yeah.
Prince Ali, Fabulous He, all of that.
Right.
Or, I guess if you're a bit more into the horror side of things, maybe you're picturing like a shadow in the corner of your room or
Yeah.
just like a ghost haunting an abandoned house or something that just goes bump in the night.
Yeah, we really tend to categorize them strictly as folklore. They fit very neatly into that box of the paranormal, spooky stories we tell around a campfire or mystical beings that grant 3 wishes if you just happen to rub the right brass pot. It's all very magical.
It's totally fairy tale stuff. But, and here's the hook for today's deep dive, and frankly is the reason I just couldn't put this source material down. What if that entire framework, the invisibility, the ghostliness, the whole spirit nature of it all, what if that is completely wrong?
Or at the very least, just a massive, massive misunderstanding of the ancient texts.
Right. Because we are doing a deep dive today into a fascinating, and I have to say, radically different reading of this entire topic. The article we're looking at is titled 4043. The Qur'an proves jinn are men, not spirits. And it's from the Axis of Truth. And just the title alone, jinn are men. That completely stops you in your tracks.
It's an incredibly provocative title, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the argument behind it is very methodical. The core thesis here really challenges the consensus that we've held on to for centuries. The source argues that jinn are not supernatural spirits just sort of floating around in the ether like Casper the Friendly Ghost.
Yeah.
They are distinct physical beings. They are an order of men.
Men. That is the word that we're going to be circling back to a lot today. Because usually when we say man, we mean us. We mean humans. Homo sapiens.
Precisely. But the source argues that man, or perhaps the better, more accurate term is accountable personhood, is a genus. It's not a single species. We are just one type of man. We are the man of clay. But we aren't the only ones.
So there's another type.
Yes. The jinn are another type entirely. They are the man of fire.
So we aren't talking about ghosts today. We aren't talking about myths or legends. We are talking about, what would you even call it?
The author refers to it as ontological history. We are talking about a civilizational reality. The source basically posits that these beings were created before Adam. They possess free will, they have moral responsibility, and they are fully embodied. The only difference, and to be fair, it is a massive difference structurally speaking, is the material they are made from.
It's physics, not metaphysics.
Exactly. It's a purely material distinction. We are carbon-based, water-heavy, clay creatures. They're fire-based, energy-heavy creatures. But we are both people in the eyes of the text.
Which completely flips the script on everything for me. Because if they're a civilization, right, and they were here before us, that means the history of Earth is a lot more crowded than we thought.
It certainly implies a very crowded house. And I think that brings us nicely to the first major piece of evidence the source actually lays out. It's what we might call the pre-Adamite theory.
Right, okay. So the source dives straight into the Quranic narrative of creation. Specifically, it looks at the exact moment before Adam is even created.
This is such a crucial scene. It's found in chapter 2, verse 30. God announces to the angels that he is going to place a viceroy or a caliph on earth. That viceroy is Adam.
Okay, now, normally in these scriptures, when God says he's going to do something, the angels are pretty chill about it. They say, glory to you, and they just get on with their business. But here, something really weird happens.
It's a major scriptural anomaly. The angels pause. They actually process this information. And then they ask a question that is, quite frankly, deeply disturbing. They ask God, will you place therein one who will do harm and shed blood?
See, I remember reading that and thinking, wait a minute. Adam hasn't even been made yet. He hasn't taken a single breath. He hasn't stepped on a bug. How on earth did the angels know he's going to shed blood?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? If Adam is a brand new invention, a totally fresh start, why is the immediate reaction of the heavenly host one of dread? The source argues that this wasn't a prediction at all. The angels weren't guessing the future. They were remembering the past.
Remembering the past, meaning they had seen this exact movie before.
Exactly. They had seen the prequel. The source suggests that the angel's question strongly implies that corruption and bloodshed were already known phenomena on Earth. The Earth wasn't this pristine, empty garden just waiting for Adam to show up. It was a crime scene.
A crime scene. Man, that is a heavy image.
But it fits the logic of the text perfectly.
Yeah.
The argument is that there was a prior accountable order. A literal civilization of beings that existed on Earth long before the clay humans arrived. And that order, the Jinn had already demonstrated a massive moral failure. They had already filled the Earth with corruption and violence.
So if you just imagine the angels' perspective here, they look down at Earth, which has just gone through this chaotic, violent era of the fire people destroying things, and then God says, okay, I'm putting a new guy down there.
And the angels look at the new guy, look at Adam, and to them, he just looks like another terrestrial being. He walks on two legs, he eats, he occupies space in a physical environment. They equate the new creation with the prior fireborn order. They just assume he's going to run the exact same corrupted software. So when they say, will you place therein one who will do harm and shed blood, they essentially mean, are we really doing this again? We already know how this ends.
It's pattern recognition. They think Adam is just Jinn 2.0.
Precisely. They see the similarities in function, so they assume a similarity in behavior. But God stops them. He gives a very short, very definitive response.
He says, I know what you do not know.
It's one of the most powerful lines in the entire text.
It is, but it's cryptic, though. What does he know that they don't?
The source breaks this down beautifully. God isn't denying their data. He's not saying, you're wrong, there was no bloodshed. He is implicitly acknowledging the violent history they are referencing. But he is signaling an ontological distinction. He's saying, yes, Adam looks like the previous tenants. He walks like them. But he is inwardly transformed.
Transformed by what exactly?
By the Ruh, the divine breath.
Okay, we're going to put a giant pin in the breath because that is pretty much the climax of this whole theory. But just to wrap up this pre-Adamite idea, this really changes how we view the timeline of our planet. It means we are the second attempt at civilization here.
Or at least the second order of stewardship. We are the successors. That's actually what the word Khalifa implies, one who succeeds another. We took over the lease after the previous tenants were evicted.
And apparently they completely trashed the place.
Thoroughly, which explains exactly why the angels were so nervous.
So if we accept this premise that there was a civilization of men before us, we have to talk about what they actually are. Because the source makes a huge deal about the physics of the Jinn. It's not poetry we're dealing with here, it's chemistry.
It is presented as a hard material reality. The source breaks down the specific composition mentioned in the text. We, the Inns, or humans, are created from clay, mud, earth, water. We are heavy. We are dense.
We succumb to gravity.
We do. We are grounded. But the Jinn, the Qur'an, is very specific about them. They are created from scorching fire, nar al-samam, and smokeless flame, marij min nar.
Scorching fire and smokeless flame.
Yeah.
Okay, break down the physics of that for me. What does that actually mean in practice?
Well, think about the properties of fire versus the properties of clay. Clay is static. It stays exactly where you put it. It's stable. Fire is dynamic. It moves, it consumes, it transforms matter into energy. Smokeless flame implies a very high purity of energy, sort of like the blue part of a flame, or perhaps plasma.
So they are incredibly swift.
Swift, luminous, penetrating. And because they are made of this subtler matter, they can actually occupy the same space as us without us bumping into them. Just like a radio wave can occupy the same room as a brick wall without any interference.
That makes total sense. It's not magic. It's just a different density of matter. But this difference in material is actually the root of the first great conflict in history, right? The story of Iblis, or Satan.
Right? The famous refusal to bow.
Now, usually when we hear the story of Satan refusing to bow to Adam, it's framed as this massive temper tantrum. He's just jealous. He's arrogant.
And he is arrogant, undeniably. But the source points out that his arrogance is actually based on a scientific argument.
He brings receipts.
He really does. Look at his dialogue. God asks him, what prevented you from bowing? And Iblis doesn't say, I just didn't feel like it. He says, I am better than him. You created me from fire, and you created him from clay.
He's literally citing the periodic table.
He is citing the hierarchy of the elements. He's looking at Adam, this lump of wet mud, and comparing it to himself, a being of swift, smokeless fire. In his mind, fire is demonstrably superior to clay. Fire rises, clay sinks. Fire is energy. Clay is just gross matter. To Iblis, asking fire to bow to clay is a fundamental violation of the laws of physics. It's like asking a laser beam to bow down to a mud brick.
It feels like he's being demoted.
Exactly. He thinks God is breaking his own rules.
Yeah.
He values high energy over low energy. And if you look at the universe purely through a material lens, he's kind of right. Fire is more dynamic than dirt.
So where exactly is the error? Because obviously he's the bad guy in this story.
The error is the missing variable. The I know what you do not know. What fire missed, what Iblis completely failed to calculate because he was so utterly obsessed with his own brilliance, was the root,
The breath.
the divine breath. The source emphasizes heavily that the root isn't intelligence. Jinn are clearly intelligent. Iblis is actively debating God, for crying out loud, and it's not some kind of code or algorithm.
So what is the root?
It is accountability. It is a trust from outside the closed system of creation. The source describes the root as the capacity for moral assent, for repentance, for holding a trust that cannot be measured or engineered by material means.
So they got it port.
In a way, yes. It's the direct connection to the divine command. So the conflict isn't just good versus evil in a simplistic way. It's brilliance versus humility. Iblis represents brilliance without humility. That is the fundamental nature of fire. It consumes, it rises, it demands to be seen. Adam represents humility infused with responsibility. Clay is lowly, yes, but it is fertile. It can grow things, and with the breath, it can carry a burden that fire simply cannot.
That's such a powerful distinction. Brilliance without humility. We see that a lot in the human world too, don't we?
We certainly do. It's the archetype of the genius who destroys absolutely everything around him because he genuinely thinks the rules don't apply to him. That is fire logic. And the source argues that even though we are clay, we are very, very susceptible to that exact logic.
We'll definitely get to how that infects us later.
Okay.
But before we move on from the Jinn as men concept, there is one more piece of evidence the source uses that I found really grounding. It's linguistic.
You're referring to the word rijal.
Right. Break that down for everyone.
In Arabic, rijal translates directly to men, plural. Usually, everywhere else in the Qur'an, it refers to human males. But the source points to Surah 72, which is actually named the Jinn. It mentions, and there were men rihal from among the humans seeking refuge, and men riyal from among the jinn.
It uses the exact same word for both groups.
It does. It doesn't say spirits of the jinn. It doesn't say entities. It says men. The source argues this is a highly deliberate classification. It implies that jinn are men of fire, just as we are men of clay.
It humanizes them. Well, I guess humanizes isn't the right word. It personizes them.
It grants them personhood. It implies they have gender, which the text actually confirms elsewhere. It implies they have society. They have hierarchies. They are addressed directly as accountable communities.
It makes them feel a lot less like monsters hiding under the bed and more like neighbors. Dangerous, ancient, invisible neighbors, but neighbors nonetheless.
Neighbors who have been living in the attic while we occupy the ground floor.
And neighbors who clearly have a very complex society of their own. Which brings us to the structure of that society. Because the source doesn't just say jinns fire. It breaks down the specific types of fire. We mentioned smokeless flame and scorching fire earlier. Honestly, I always just assumed those were poetic synonyms.
The expert analysis here suggests they actually represent a strict class structure, a social hierarchy within the jinn civilization itself.
Like a caste system based on energy purity.
Very much so. Think about the properties of the elements again. First, you have the smokeless flame. Mary's M.S.R. What is smokeless fire?
It's clean. It's efficient.
It's highly refined. It's intense heat, but it's almost invisible. It's pure energy. The source links this to a subtle elite, a ruling class. These are the jinn who operate through strategy, through knowledge, and through structure. They aren't the ones running around breaking plates in your kitchen. They are the architects. They are the ones dealing in widespread influence and high-level manipulation.
So they are the thinkers.
The thinkers, the strategists, the hidden hand, if you will. Then you have the scorching fire, Nar al-Samam. Scorching implies something much more volatile. It burns, it creates smoke, it destroys. It's messy.
The thugs.
The volatile class, the foot soldiers. These represent force, destabilization, and spectacle. When you hear about poltergeists throwing furniture across a room or terrifying physical manifestations, that's the scorching class.
So you have the brains, the smokeless, and the muscle, the scorching.
In a way, yes. And this framework helps explain a ton of ancient mythology. The source makes a fascinating connection to things like the Nephilim, the Watchers, and the giants found in other religious traditions.
Oh, right. The Watchers from the Book of Enoch. The giants in Genesis. You know, the sons of God saw the daughters of men.
Exactly. Usually those are interpreted as fallen angels, but structurally speaking, angels don't have gender. They don't procreate. This theory offers a completely different explanation. What if we reframe those myths entirely? Instead of winged beings theatrically descending from the sky, what if these are actually cultural memories? Distorted memories of real interactions between different orders of creation.
Memories of the clay civilization interacting directly with the fire civilization.
Exactly. Imagine early humans, simple men of clay, encountering the smokeless elite of the Jinn. These beings are luminous. They are swift. They have advanced knowledge of the earth that humans simply don't have yet. To an early human, they would look like gods.
Or demigods.
Right. And if they shared knowledge, things like metallurgy, advanced weaponry, cosmetics, which are all the things the Watchers are specifically accused of teaching, it would look exactly like magic. But really, it was just tech transfer. It was the older, vastly more advanced fire civilization interfering with the younger, developing clay civilization.
That is just a wild thought, that all our myths of gods and demons are just a distorted historical record of two civilizations sharing a single planet. It wasn't magic at all, it was just an interspecies violation.
It frames the entire forbidden knowledge trope in a very logical, systemic way. The Fire Order, being older and subtler, knew how to manipulate the Earth. They taught the Claymen how to do it, but crucially, they taught them without giving them the moral maturity to handle it. And chaos naturally ensued.
Speaking of technical advancement, we absolutely have to talk about Solomon, because the source uses the story of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba's throne to prove a massive point about technology versus magic.
This is genuinely one of my favorite parts of the analysis. It's a brilliant case study in capability. So, set the scene. King Solomon, who notoriously has authority over both men and jinn, wants the Queen of Sheba's throne brought to his court. He wants it there before she even arrives as a massive display of diplomatic power.
Which is a logistical nightmare.
Yeah.
He needs to move a heavy physical object across hundreds of miles basically instantly. FedEx isn't going to cut it here.
Right. So he asks his court who can do this, and he gets two volunteers. The first is an Ifrit. Now, an Ifrit is described as being from the Jinn. The source categorizes him as part of that scorching, volatile class, high power, high strength.
The muscle we talked about.
The muscle. The Ifrit says, I will bring it to you before you can rise from your place. I am strong and trusty for such work.
Strong and trusty. He sounds exactly like a general contractor giving a quote.
He really does. And notice the specific language he uses. He doesn't say, I will wiggle my nose and it will magically appear. He says, I can handle the weight. He's basically quoting his mechanical specs. He's saying, I have the sheer horsepower to physically lift this heavy object and fly it here at supersonic speed. The source argues this isn't a ghost passing through walls. This is a capable operative using the laws of physics, fire physics, to move physical matter.
It's like Newtonian physics on steroids.
Exactly. But then he gets beaten, and who beats him? One with the knowledge of the book.
A human.
A human, a man of clay. This second figure steps up and says, I will bring it to you before your gaze returns to you, meaning in the literal blink of an eye, and boom, the throne is there.
Now, normally when we read that, we think, okay, that guy just had better magic. The Ifrit was a level 10 wizard, and the human was a level 50 wizard.
But the source completely flips that perspective. It says, this wasn't magic-defying physics, it was a hierarchy of capability. Think about the mobile phone analogy. If you went back to the Middle Ages and showed a peasant a smartphone, say you FaceTime someone in China, what would they think?
They'd think I was a wizard. They'd probably burn me at the stake. They'd think I was using a crystal ball.
Exactly. But it's not magic. It's technology. It operates within physical laws they simply don't understand yet. You aren't shouting loud enough for your voice to reach China. You are converting your voice into data, sending it through a complex network and decoding it on the other end. You are using the underlying code of the world.
So applying that back to Solomon and the throne.
The Ifrit was using raw, brute power, fire energy. He was going to physically carry the throne through space. But the one with knowledge was using something much higher. He had knowledge of the book. The source interprets this as direct access to the divine command, the underlying operating system of reality itself. He didn't move the throne through space at all. He manipulated the spatial coordinates of reality itself.
He hacked the Matrix.
In a sense, yes, because he was aligned with the architect of the Matrix. The lesson here is that raw power, which is fire, is always subordinate to sanctified knowledge, which is clay infused with breath. The Ifrit was strong, sure, but the knowledge holder understood the code. It reveals that this universe has a strict hierarchy. And oddly enough, the supernatural feats of the Jinn are just physics we don't know how to do yet.
They are powerful and able to interact with the material world in ways claymen cannot easily replicate. Like, maybe they can manipulate energy or matter in ways we can't, because they literally are energy.
Precisely. But, and this is the vital ticker, they are still strictly accountable. They aren't gods. They are just a different build of men. And the story proves that a human, made of clay, who is aligned with God through the breath and knowledge, can vastly outstrip the material capabilities of the fire.
So we really don't need to be afraid of them just because they are stronger or faster, because we have access to a completely different kind of operating system.
That is the perfect way to put it. We run on a different OS entirely, one that has root access to the creator if we actually choose to use it. The Jinn are stuck in the physics of the system. The man of God can transcend the system entirely.
That is incredibly empowering. It takes all the cheap horror movie fear out of it.
It does, but it also places a massive burden on us. We have that transcendent potential, but how often do we actually use it?
Which naturally leads us to the present day. Because if they are a civilization and they are here and they possess this fire logic, how do they influence us today? Because I don't see firemen walking down the street. I don't see Ifrits applying for jobs at local construction sites.
No, you don't. And the source argues that is entirely by design. If you are a civilization of smokeless fire, invisible, subtle, highly strategic, you don't rule by occupying territory with physical tanks. That's crude. That's clay thinking. You rule by influence. You rule by occupying minds.
The modern mechanics of control.
The source introduces a very powerful concept here to explain this. The egregore.
An egregore. That's a term you hear a lot in occult circles, but define it for us in this specific context.
An egregore is defined as a collective thought form. It is a psychic structure that is sustained entirely by shared attention, emotion, fear, or outrage. Think of it like a battery, but instead of running on electricity, it runs on human focus.
So if enough people are angry about the exact same thing or scared of the same thing, that creates a thing.
It creates an emergent structure. It creates a mood that hangs over a city or a nation. But more than that, it acts as a reservoir of energy. The source argues that the fire order, specifically that elite smokeless class, understands exactly how to seed narratives. They plant ideas. They create polarities. Left versus right. Oppressor versus protester. Us versus them.
And the actual content of the fight doesn't even matter.
Not really, no. To them, the ideology is just the kindling. What matters is the fire. What matters is the heat generated by the conflict. The egregore thrives on engagement. Whether you are screaming in support of a cause or screaming against it, you are feeding the exact same fire. You are outputting heat. You are outputting raw emotion.
That sounds painfully familiar. It sounds exactly like the internet.
It sounds literally like social media, doesn't it? The source explicitly mentions that systems of finance, media outreach cycles, and educational structures can be seen as human expressions of fire-dominant logic. They are invisible architectures.
Invisible architecture. That is chilling. So the idea is that they don't need to possess you like in some Hollywood horror movie. They just need you to be obsessed with the conflict.
Because domination requires consent. They can't force you, but they can invite you. Satan himself says in the Qur'an, I had no authority over you except that I invited you and you responded to me. So they build these structures, these egregores of endless outrage and endless consumption, and we just walk right into them. We willingly give them our time, our minds, our hearts.
We volunteer our energy.
We do. We doom scroll for hours on end. We get worked up about things we can't possibly control. We let fear dictate our daily decisions. Every single time we do that, we are pouring our clay energy into a fire system. We are feeding the beast. And it doesn't matter what your politics are. Left wing, right wing, it's all just fuel. They harvest from all of it impartially.
This totally reframes the whole idea of the occult, too. The source touches on magic and rituals in a really interesting way.
It does. It argues that rituals, magic with a K, obscure symbols, pagan rites aren't actually about summoning a literal monster into the room to eat you. They are technologies of attunement.
Attunement, like tuning a radio to a specific frequency.
Exactly. When people engage in these rituals, or even when they just obsess over illuminated symbolism in pop culture, they are attempting to attune their personal frequency to the fire. Why do they do it? Because they want the perks of fire. They see the Jinn, these swift, luminous, powerful beings, and they desperately want to be like them. They are seeking the brilliance of fire without the humility of breath.
It's the desire for superpowers, essentially.
It's the desire for elevation above the human condition. They want the power. They want the speed. They want to be illuminated. But they absolutely do not want the heavy accountability that comes with the clay and breath composition.
It's the Iblis trap all over again. The I am better mentality. It's the desire to be superior, to be above the mud of regular, accountable life.
It is the eternal human temptation to escape the heaviness of responsibility and trade it for the quick flash of power. And the Fire Order is very, very happy to facilitate that trade because it feeds the egregore. It creates a human who actively acts like a Jinn.
This leads us directly to the darker side of human history, the ongoing struggle between these two natures. The source brings up the story of Cain.
Cain and Abel, the first murder. After Cain kills his brother, which is the first act of scorching violence by a human, what does he do next? He doesn't wander in the desert forever, weeping and repenting. The source points out that he goes to the land of Nod and he builds a city.
He builds a city. I always thought that was such a weird detail. You just killed your brother, you're an outcast, and now suddenly you're an urban planner.
It represents organized corruption. It is civilization without repentance. The source suggests that the city, this architecture, is violence aligning directly with structure. It's the very first human attempt to build a system based on fire logic rather than clay humility. He builds walls to protect himself from judgment. He builds a hierarchy. He creates the first system.
And this leads perfectly into the concept of hybridity. Now, when I hear the word hybrid, my brain immediately goes to sci-fi, half human, half alien mutants. But the source says it's not biological breeding at all.
No, it has nothing to do with DNA. It's psychological. It's spiritual. Hybridity refers to humans in whom fire attributes dominate clay temperament. So you are biologically human. You are physically made of clay, but your software is running entirely on fire.
What does that actually look like in a person?
You know it when you see it. Charisma without conscience. Ambition without restraint, brilliance without humility. Think of the great tyrants of history. Think of the ruthless corporate raiders of today who will happily destroy 1,000 families just to make a stock price go up a fraction of a percent. They have incredibly high energy, they are scorching, they build massive things, but there is no breath. There is no accountability to anything outside of their own ego.
They're smokeless fire wearing a human suit.
Metaphorically, yes. The source says these traits, volatility and appetite, intermingle very easily with clay. We are highly susceptible to it. We naturally like power, we like speed. So the Fire Order doesn't ever need to breed with us biologically. They just need to mold our personalities to match theirs. They want us to become fire hybrids, humans who act with the exact arrogance of Jinn.
It's a hostile takeover of the soul, not the body.
And it only works because we actively let it work. Which brings us right back to free will. The fire cannot force the clay. The roux in the clay, that divine breath, can be dimmed. You can cover it up with thick layers of soot and smoke. You can ignore it for your entire life, but it cannot be extinguished.
Because it's directly from God.
Because it is a trust from outside the closed system. It is the one thing fire simply cannot replicate. Fire can simulate intelligence, it can simulate anger, it can simulate joy, but it cannot simulate the roux. It cannot simulate true repentance or true humility. And that means no matter how deep you are in the egregore, you always have a way out.
So the battle, the deep dive we promised in the start, isn't about fighting ghosts. It isn't about buying a specific amulet to ward off evil spirits. It's an internal daily battle.
It is an ontological battle. The struggle isn't geopolitical at all. It's not about borders or elections or nations. It is a fundamental battle between blaze and breath, between the impulse to dominate, to consume, to be better than that's the blaze, and the impulse to submit to truth, to be accountable, to serve, to grow. That's the breath.
Fire may precede clay, but breath transforms clay into something fire cannot command without consent.
That is such a powerful line from the source material.
It is the ultimate statement of empowerment. You are made of clay, yes. You are heavy. You are fragile. You are completely mortal, but you carry something the fire does not. And because of that, you have the final say. The Jinn cannot command you. They can only invite you. You hold the veto. Usually when we talk about this kind of stuff, ancient civilizations, hidden masters, psychological warfare, it leaves you feeling really paranoid. Like, oh no, they're watching us right now. But this reading, it actually makes me feel responsible.
That is the exact intent of the author, I believe. Paranoia is just another form of fear, which just feeds the egregore anyway. If you sit around terrified of the Jinn, you are literally giving them your energy. Responsibility true, grounded accountability starves the fire. When you act with humility, when you refuse to get sucked into the daily outrage cycle, when you treat others with the dignity of the roux, you are literally breaking the invisible architecture. You are becoming something the fire fundamentally cannot control.
You are asserting your clayness.
You are asserting your humanity, the exact humanity the angels didn't think we were capable of. Remember, the angels asked, will they shed blood? Every single time we choose peace over violence, we prove the angels wrong. Every single time we choose humility over arrogance, we prove Iblis wrong.
So here is the question for you, listening to this right now. We've talked extensively about the egregore, that massive collective thought form of outrage and distraction. We've talked about the fire logic that seems to run our modern world. In your daily life, when you're scrolling through your feed, when you're getting completely worked up about the latest news cycle, when you're chasing that next hit of pure ambition, ask yourself, are you feeding the fire? Are you adding fuel to the egregore? Or are you acting from the quiet humility of the breath?
Are you operating on blaze, or are you operating on breath? The choice ultimately is entirely yours.
And that is exactly where we're going to leave you to think. This has been The Deep Dive. Thanks for listening.
Until next time.